Mel Gibson was on the Joe Rogan podcast talking about the sequel to The Passion of the Christ.
That was a crazy movie because it was a great movie, but it seemed like there was resistance to that movie.
You got all those books, the Bible, you've got the different Gospels and stuff that people are quite familiar with.
What if the most controversial and talked about film of our era hid secrets the world was never meant to uncover? When Mel Gibson joined Joe Rogan on his podcast, the discussion started like any ordinary conversation. Films, faith, Hollywood politics. But then, Gibson began revealing shocking truths about the Passion of the Christ that left everyone stunned. Suddenly, the room went quiet. Rogan, a man who's interviewed presidents, fighters, and whistleblowers, couldn't hide his shock. This wasn't a stunt to stir controversy. It wasn't marketing designed to go viral. Gibson was revealing a side of the story Hollywood fought tooth and nail to keep hidden, and once you grasp what he exposed, you'll never watch the film the same way again. To understand the magnitude of what Gibson uncovered, we need to go back to where it all began. The Passion of the Christ was never intended to be just another biblical epic. Gibson wasn't chasing sweeping visuals or safe storytelling. He aimed for something raw, gripping, and unflinchingly real, something that would confront audiences and force them to reckon with the true meaning of sacrifice. As he told Rogan, the idea was clear. We are all accountable. Christ's sacrifice was not just a story from the past. It carries implications for every person alive today. Gibson spent years immersed in the four Gospels, dissecting every verse about Jesus' final hours. But he went beyond the text most filmmakers would dare to touch. He drew from ancient writings, theological commentary, and hidden sources, crafting not just the chronology of events, but the immense human, spiritual, and divine weight behind each moment of suffering. The very first scene sets the tone. We're in the Garden of Gethsemane. Darkness pressing in. Jesus kneels in agonizing prayer as his closest friends drift into sleep. The vulnerability is staggering. Here stands someone both fully human and fully divine, sweat and blood mingling under unbearable pressure. Then Satan slinks through the shadows, whispering fear and doubt. A serpent emerges. But Jesus crushes it beneath his heel, echoing Genesis and the very first promise of redemption. Every frame, every shadow, every line of dialogue carries deliberate meaning. Gibson created a film that demands attention, a movie that challenges viewers to engage deeply and confront something much larger than themselves. This was cinema designed to be felt, not just watched. And then there's what Hollywood tried to suppress. During the Rogan interview, Gibson revealed a truth few openly discuss. The film faced extreme resistance from the start. He noticed a silent yet powerful double standard. Films exploring religions like Buddhism, Islam, or Judaism were treated with nuance and respect. Christian stories, treated differently. Skepticism, dismissal, even hostility was standard. Christianity was, in a way, the one religion Hollywood felt free to mock. Studios that should have supported a project from an Oscar-winning director suddenly grew cold. Calls went unanswered, meetings were cancelled, longtime colleagues distanced themselves. The message was unmistakable. This story, and the filmmaker telling it, wasn't welcome. But Gibson refused to back down. For him, this wasn't just a career move. It was personal. His Catholic faith made it a mission. When traditional funding vanished, he financed the film himself. He assembled a team of believers willing to embrace the vision, unafraid of the controversy. And the result? A film that stunned audiences and defied Hollywood's expectations. The Passion of the Christ became one of the highest-grossing R-rated films ever, proving that audiences were hungry for bold, uncompromising storytelling, exactly the kind of cinema Hollywood executives insisted nobody wanted. But the making of this film was anything but ordinary. What Mel Gibson revealed to Joe Rogan goes beyond Hollywood gossip. It drifts into the realm of the unbelievable. On set, things happened that no one could rationally explain. Jim Caviezel, cast as Jesus, endured real physical suffering that no special effects could imitate. The cross he bore weighed over 30 pounds. During one take, it completely dislocated his shoulder. During the scourging scene, he was struck twice with real whips, once so violently that it knocked the wind from his lungs and left his hands raw and bleeding. His agony wasn't acting, it was painfully, undeniably real, and that intensity bleeds from every frame of the final film. Then came the lightning. Assistant director John Michelini was struck twice while filming, and reports suggest Caviezel himself narrowly escaped being struck during the crucifixion scene. In biblical tradition, lightning is often a symbol of divine power and judgment. On set, it appeared at key moments, leaving the crew convinced that the line between natural and supernatural had become almost impossibly thin. The transformations weren't only physical. Luca Lionello, who played Judas Iscariot, came onto the set as a staunch atheist. By the time filming ended, he had become a believer, profoundly changed by months of exploring betrayal, guilt, and redemption. Maya Morgan-Stern, portraying Mary, was quietly pregnant during production, a living symbol of life, death, resurrection, and renewal intertwined with the story unfolding on screen. There were even claims of unexplained healings. A young girl with severe epilepsy reportedly went a month without seizures after being present on set. Others spoke of restored senses or sudden, unexplainable recoveries. Whether divine intervention, coincidence, or psychological transformation, the cast and crew walked away convinced they had participated in something far larger than filmmaking. One scene captures Gibson's vision perfectly. After the crucifixion, Jesus rests in Mary's arms, echoing Michelangelo's Pietà. The composition conveys grief and grace, devastation and dignity, human sorrow and divine purpose, transcending any single religious tradition to speak to universal experiences of love, loss, and hope. When the film hit theaters, reactions were intense and polarized. Roger Ebert, one of the most influential critics of his generation, gave it 4 stars, calling it the most violent and harrowing film he'd ever seen, and admitted he finally grasped the depth of Christ's suffering. Other critics praised Gibson's artistic daring, comparing his vision to the great masters of spiritual cinema. But controversy erupted from multiple fronts. Religious leaders expressed concerns before release, fearing certain portrayals could reinforce anti-Semitic stereotypes that had caused centuries of harm. Gibson insisted his intent was to show humanity's collective responsibility for Christ's death, not to target any group. Scholars noted his inclusion of imaginative elements like demonic visions of Judas, which were meant as symbolic, not historical. The film walked a fine line between theological meditation and historical representation. No viewer left neutral. Some found it spiritually transformative. Others found it troubling. The intensity of debate only fueled public curiosity. People who normally avoided religious films lined up to see it. Churches organized mass viewings, sermons dissected its scenes, media outlets broke down every frame. Gibson had created a work that refused to be ignored, and he's far from done. During his Rogan interview, he revealed that for the past 6 to 7 years, he and screenwriter Randall Wallace have been developing a new, even more ambitious project. A film exploring the resurrection not as a linear story, but as a cosmic meditation on the eternal battle between good and evil. This isn't a sequel. It's a bold expansion into uncharted cinematic territory, spanning from the fall of angels to the death of the last apostle. For Gibson, the Gospels are history, evidenced by the unwavering testimony of apostles who died rather than deny what they saw. As he asked Rogan, Who dies for something they know is a lie? That question, he says, validates the supernatural claims at Christianity's core. The resurrection defies the natural order. Gibson admits that for years he accepted it because others believed, but over time he sought his own understanding. This personal journey shapes everything he creates. His aim isn't to preach or confirm existing beliefs. It's to challenge both skeptics and believers, to confront profound questions about existence, meaning, and what lies beyond life. So, what left Joe Rogan visibly shaken? It wasn't one single revelation. It was the weight of it all, the physical suffering, the unexplainable events, the spiritual transformations, and the uncompromising vision of a filmmaker who dared to tell the story. No one else would. The truth is, creating The Passion of the Christ forced Mel Gibson to stand almost entirely alone against an industry determined to bury this story forever. The truth is, events happened during filming that defy explanation, moments that no rational lens can account for. The truth is, art made with unwavering conviction can change lives in ways no blockbuster ever will. The truth is, faith sometimes demands suffering. Speaking honestly can risk everything you've built, and some stories are so essential that they justify every sacrifice required to tell them. These are truths that cut through the cynicism of our modern age. They reminded Joe Rogan and the millions who tuned in that sincerity still exists, that people still create for reasons beyond profit, and that conviction still moves mountains. Sometimes, the most controversial stories are the ones the world most desperately needs to hear. Gibson's journey represents a rarity today, an uncompromising refusal to play it safe, to bend to industry gatekeepers, or to let the powerful decide which stories deserve life and which should be silenced. The Passion of the Christ forces viewers to face uncomfortable realities: suffering, sacrifice, redemption. It offers no easy answers, no comforting reassurances. Instead, it challenges us to wrestle with profound questions about human nature, divine purpose, and the cost of salvation, questions that most of modern entertainment avoids entirely. More than 20 years later, the film remains polarizing. Some call it a spiritual masterpiece, others find it deeply troubling. Both perspectives hold truth because great art provokes strong reactions. It touches something raw and uncontainable inside us. The Gibson-Rogan conversation exposed layers that typical celebrity interviews never reach. Behind the controversy lies a human story of struggle, sacrifice, and relentless commitment to a vision. It reminded viewers that reality is not always explainable through logic or materialism, and that true vulnerability, even from a figure as tough and controversial as Gibson, can move hearts and open minds. And yet, even after all that, Gibson isn't finished. The story of the Passion of the Christ was only the beginning. The risks he took, the suffering endured, the devotion poured into every frame, they were all part of a larger journey. A journey that challenges not just how we see history, but how we see ourselves. The resurrection project he's developing now promises to push boundaries even further. It's not just about retelling a familiar story. It's about exploring the eternal struggle between light and darkness, good and evil, faith and doubt. He wants audiences to feel the weight of that struggle in their bones, to confront questions they may have never dared to ask. What is the nature of sacrifice? How far would we go for truth? Can redemption be truly earned? Or is it a gift we are all too quick to take for granted? Gibson's work reminds us that stories have power, real, transformative power. Not the shallow kind sold for clicks or ticket sales, but the kind that changes hearts, reshapes minds, and leaves a mark on the soul. Every frame of the Passion of the Christ was built on that principle. That art born from conviction, even in the face of opposition, can awaken something deep inside us. Watching the film, seeing the pain, the devotion, The sheer unflinching honesty of it all remind us that some stories aren't just entertainment. They are a challenge, a call to witness, to question, to reflect, and to grow. And perhaps that is the most overlooked truth of all. In a world drowning in cynicism, celebrity noise, and hollow spectacle, Gibson's work cuts through the static. It shows us that courage still exists, that creating something meaningful still requires risk, that faith, conviction, and a refusal to compromise can make a story resonate far beyond the screen, that sometimes the most controversial stories are the ones the world most needs to see. So when you think of the Passion of the Christ, remember this: it's not just a movie. It's a testament to what happens when one person refuses to compromise their vision, to bend to pressure, or to silence their voice. It's a story about sacrifice, both on screen and behind the camera, about enduring opposition, confronting fear, and creating something so powerful that it cannot be ignored. And for anyone willing to watch closely, listen deeply, and let themselves be moved, it offers a reminder that true art born of conviction, still has the power to change everything. Because in the end, the hidden truth isn't hidden anymore. It's waiting for those who are brave enough to see it, waiting for those who are ready to be transformed, waiting for those who understand that some stories are worth every risk, every struggle, and every sacrifice. Stories that echo long after the credits roll. Stories that, if we let them, can change the way we see the world and ourselves. That's what most people missed about the Passion of the Christ. It wasn't just a movie. It was a man risking everything to tell a story the world wanted silenced and winning. The hidden truth is no longer hidden. It's there for anyone willing to see it, to listen, and to allow themselves to be changed by stories that actually matter. Stories that cost something real. Stories that have the power to transform everything